Welcome to the Better Together podcast, where we look for ways we can work together to advance the cause of Jesus Christ throughout the world. Today we have with us Miss Ruth McDonald. Many of you know her as a missionary to Japan for over 38 years. So now she and her husband Donnie are transitioning into new ministries here in the United States, and we're going to talk to her about that today. Well, thank you, Miss Ruth, for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
Wow, 38 years of being on the field there in Japan, and I can't imagine what that is like to transition to different time zones, different food, different ministries, everything that you were doing there in Japan. How's all that going for you?
I think it's going okay. We're about 3.5 weeks in, and just for the point of precision, we were actually only in Japan for 36 years. We were with the mission for 38.
Okay.
But the first 2, we were raising money to try to get there. But I mean, I was just a young woman when we went, 25 years old. And so I've spent way more time in Japan than in America.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's different. Everything's new and different and a little bit overwhelming, but it's going okay.
So a lot different.
Yes.
Than it was. We think about what it was like in the 1980s and what it's like in the 2020s, and what a wonderful ministry you had there. So I know you miss everyone, and how can we pray for Japan with you guys not being on the field?
Well, I think Japan will survive fine without us being on the field, but do continue to pray for Japan. I think our hearts will always be there in part after spending so much time. And Japan is still the second largest unreached people group in the world, next to the Muslim bloc. And what that means is, we say it a lot, but what it actually means is that less than 0.5% of the population is Christian. And we're not talking about just any garden variety Christian. We're talking Christian. Mm-hmm. And so most Japanese, I think 84%, have never met a Christian.
Wow.
So just pray for those that are continuing to work in Japan. Thankfully, we left a lot more missionaries in Japan than there were when we went. Mm-hmm. We have a lot more pastors in Japan than there were when we went. So they're poised for a harvest, and they're having harvest. And so just continue to pray for the missionaries that are there and the Japanese pastors and Christians that are there sharing their faith.
Yeah, so thank you for what you all have done. And it is exciting to see all those missionaries, see the pastors. We met some of them at the International Fellowship, and wonderful people and wonderful work that they're doing. So we want to encourage our churches, people that are listening. Let's pray that we'll continue to see the gospel grow and see people come to Christ.
I've learned a lot from the Japanese believers, both the lay people and the pastors. There are absolutely no perks in Japan for being a Christian. Mm-hmm. It's like, I thought back to my background, and when I got baptized, everyone rejoiced, all my loved ones and aunts and uncles, and I know it's different in America now, but at least when I grew up, it was a positive that you were a good church-going person and blah, blah, blah. But there's no perk. It's a stigma. It's like the worst and most shameful thing you could come out with to your family.
Yeah.
And so those pastors and Christians that are faithfully following Jesus are doing it at great cost and self-sacrifice. So just pray for them that they will stay encouraged.
Such sweet people. So let's remember, pray for them, and pray God continues to strengthen them as they try to serve in a difficult situation.
It is difficult, and they've taught me a lot about being disciples of Jesus.
And we could all learn from them. So you've had that ministry. Now you all are shifting gears into something different, and you're the director of the WNAC, our women's ministry. What is it like to go through a transition, not just a cultural transition, but also a ministry transition into what you're doing now?
Well, I'm actually really thankful for the new opportunity. It's not retirement. I'm not just like ending a ministry and wondering what I'm going to do now and feeling like a has-been. God has opened wide the door for a new ministry opportunity, one that I think fits my gifts, and I'm excited about it. I'm excited that he gave us something to go to, not just to leave from. I think that would be that would leave me feeling adrift.
Very good.
So I'm excited about it.
And probably some of our listeners that might be older might even be able to learn a little bit from this. It's like you're learning, it's almost some of the old skills, but it's a new environment. There's a lot of changes that you're undergoing right now.
There are, and I'm not really all that old yet, but I believe that no matter how old we get, as long as we're still breathing, we have something we can do.
Absolutely.
For the kingdom. And so don't ever think you're useless or on the shelf, because you're not.
Yeah.
If I might be permitted to just tell a personal story. My mother lived to be way up in her 80s, and she lost pretty much everything through a stroke. She lost her ability to speak at all and read. And you would think, okay, no purpose, right?
Yeah.
But you would talk with her, and she would hum. She would hum hymns like Trust and Obey. Wow. And she was still giving witness and finishing strong in her weakness. And that just, wow, that blew me away.
What a legacy.
Yes.
So no matter what, and so people that took care of her, people that were interacting with her, they were still getting a witness. They were still getting some fellowship. They're believers. So you're saying all of us it'd be good to think that way.
Yes. If we're still breathing, if we're still here, God still has a way for us to minister to people.
So you've been in this position for less than a month.
Right.
So everyone asks you, well, what's the WNAC? What do you see for our women's ministry? It's hard to know at this particular point, I suspect, but share with us a bit about what you see as the future.
Obviously, we're building on a foundation that has been laid for us by tremendous women for a couple of 100 years at least, and I have a great respect for that. As a Free Will Baptist, we used to laugh and say, rocked in a Free Will Baptist cradle.
Yes.
You know, my mother, my grandmother were all involved in WNAC, and I don't take that lightly. They've laid a great foundation for us. But times have changed, and many women I meet now, they are not interested in a monthly WNAC meeting. They're saying women are falling off of that, and it's hard to get the young women involved. And so I like the focus shift that we're going through. Our charter will always be WNAC, but we are going more by the name of Women's Ministries, Free Will Baptist Women's Ministries. So when women say, well, we don't have a WAC anymore, I say, well, what do you have? And sometimes they don't know what I'm asking, but I say, well, what are your women doing? Are they getting together for Bible study? Oh, yeah, we have a couple of 3 Bible studies. What are the young women doing? Oh, well, they go out to coffee, and they have an accountability group, and we have people who work at the Crisis Pregnancy Center. And, okay, that's all women's ministry.
Yes.
So I really believe that if you're a woman and you're a Free Will Baptist, you're a part of Free Will Baptist Women's Ministries. So that's the vision I'd like to cast. And that would include girls from the age of about 12 up who we're trying to minister to through the Shine conferences, and young women active for Christ, YWAC. And then it would include grandma and everybody up to 112 years old who have brought us this far and to whom we're really grateful. And if you're still having a WAC meeting, great. Blessings on you. But it doesn't have to just be that.
Yeah. So any way people want to be involved, ladies want to be involved, young girls want to be involved. There's something for them.
And more than half our denomination are women. So.
They are. Yeah, more than half. So that's a pretty good segment.
Right.
Pretty good group. So we're hearing what you're talking about. We're excited about you being there. What can we do to support Free Will Baptist Women's Ministries?
Well, there have been a lot of shifts in the last few years. We went from an auxiliary, which is an old-fashioned term, to a department about 10 years ago. But a lot of people don't realize that that is a shift in funding. And we've been helped some. But as chapters of the traditional WAC have closed down and ceased to exist, and we have discontinued the idea of paying dues to be a member of a group, because we're all members now. We're trying to focus more on just voluntary giving. And so one of the things that you can do is to give.
Yes.
I know every department says that, but we are very under budgeted, underfunded. And we're trying to emphasize that if your church or your ladies group could just put us in your budget for a monthly donation, that can cover the expenses of what we're trying to do. Not just supporting the office, which is important. You have to support that trunk of the tree. But also that we can't do all the visions, fulfill all the visions that we have to come alongside women and encourage them in what they're doing and to encourage them to disciple women without funding. And so, that's one of the biggest things.
And so if anyone's ever been to the National Association business meeting, Terry Hill will often stand up, your auditor, and he'll say, money comes in, but all the money pretty much goes out. And so his point is that people give money to the WNAC, but it's going to missions or it's going to scholarships. And so what I'm hearing you say, which same thing that Terry has said, is that it would be helpful if people would give a regular offering or put you in the budget. Because otherwise there's nothing that's coming in to really support the office or what you're trying to accomplish.
Yeah, many of the funds that WNAC receives are what we call pass-through funds. They're designated by the donor to be passed through to international missions, North American Ministries, the provision closet, different scholarships that we provide, and that's wonderful. I mean, WNAC has been probably one of the largest contributors to missions and missions causes throughout the years. And I personally and our ministry have been recipients of that, and it's wonderful. But if it's all passing through, then the department itself is not funded adequately.
So we want to think about that as we're sending, and send something for the office if at all possible, please.
Absolutely.
Because that's a way that could help out as well. And then they can keep up with what you're doing, your social media sites, your website as well is a good way for them to stay informed.
That's right. It's at WNAC.org. And we have a lot of tabs on there that you can click and find links to different resources that are available to you. Our online magazine, Treasure, it's underread, people. We need to drum up some more interest.
Yeah.
I mean, we have, I'd say over 1,000 people every month reading it, but we need a lot more than that because there's some really good stuff there.
Absolutely.
We need to do better at marketing it, I'm sure, but the Bible studies are rich and they're good. They're competitive, I think, with other things that are out there. So
absolutely, and
or comparable is a better word than competitive.
Yeah, but we get the point.
They're good quality.
They can read it on their phones.
That's right.
They can read it on their computer. We encourage you maybe make some copies at your church for folks that might be older that don't do the phones as much.
Yeah. Grab somebody younger and they can know how to do it. Print it out for you so you can have a paper copy.
Yes, and you will be in business.
That's right.
So those are some good things. So we want to pray for more ladies, more young girls to be involved. 12 to 112, I think
That's
you
right.
said.
I like it.
You also mentioned the money aspect, the financial aspect is part of it. So think about putting the women's ministries in your budget, sending some extra along for these pass-through funds, and pray for you and Miss Phyllis. It's a small office that you all have trying to do some great things for such a big number of folks here in our denomination.
Thank you. We would love to grow, but we're trusting God for that, for the resources to do that.
Well, thank you, Miss Ruth, for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me.
And we want to thank you all for listening. And we want to encourage you to take this podcast, share it, give it to someone who might benefit. Remember, every little bit counts. So we truly are better when we work together. We're better together.